We're in session. Amy,
Yes.
do you think it's possible that while we're talking to Matthew and Jonathan, you could look at a copy of the contract?
I have 7 copies of each other.
He's already on it.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Jonathan, you think-
Thank you, Amy.
Anticipates council needs.
I have some copies.
Nice thought. It's a 4.
4 is good, I'll settle for it.
I don't believe in 5. So okay. Continue in effect until modified. Page 2.
The Matthews employment agreement, I didn't have an executed copy handy. I can get one if that's exactly what it was.
Thank you very much. We all had a copy, but none of us had it with us.
The just didn't ask me to do it. I think I printed 7. I can give it 6. Matthew, you didn't share these.
I'm not sure they would know the answer to this, but I think that might be just a holdover from Julie.
What's
Oh, they're not there.
well, that's the question.
Not the merit increase clause.
No, I believe Matthew, when you and I were negotiating this, with Matthew, he recommended.
Yes, as a holdover from,
Okay,
because I was reviewing what was done previously and.
for the record, the section about the merit increase, which is section 5.1, was a holdover. The reason it's worded the way it is just probably an oversight by me, but just a holdover from the Julie Kruger era.
So it's not a special extra thing on top of anything, it's just saying. There will be an annual evaluation and there's an annual reasonable, shall receive a reasonable merit increase commensurate with performance.
It just indicates what it excludes. There, I think the intent there was to exclude a council indicating that, standard cost of living adjustment. Oh, that's your merit for the year, that's your COLA.
Why don't you guys come up to the table?
Oh, sure. We'll just sit where Amy was sitting, if that's okay.
Pull up here. Okay. So, did we talk about section 5.1? Matthew, Jonathan?
Oh, which contract are you referring to? Are they both section 5.1? I don't know. They may not be.
Yeah, they are. Section 5.1. Page 4 on both.
I have one of those. Okay, I see it.
And they're both word for word exactly the same except for the salary. and all that. Yeah, they're both word for word the same, agree? So. We talk about, when we're talking about one, we're talking about both at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the issue here is that. There's some awkwardness associated with the word shall. And I think I brought this up last year, when other city employees are not eligible for a quote merit increase and quote. They all get the COLA, if you want to call it, across the board increase. Which in this year would be 3%. They all get a step increase, which in this case would be 3% if they're eligible. It's about half of our employees, would you say, are at the top of their range?
Yeah, somewhere.
So about half the employees don't get a step increase because they're at the top of the range, so they only get the 3% COLA. Understand?
And step is always 3%. There's never any variation. It is 3% actually, exactly every year. For the ones that receive it.
Yeah, that's the way we calculate it.
So the difference is they get a structured increase, i.e. a step.
Yeah.
Until some maximum.
7 steps.
And the city attorney and the city manager, if I understand right, there's no structured increase.
That's right.
It's negotiated annually
Yes,
and there's no max.
correct.
Although the 10 years that we've had these two guys, they've both got the COLA that other city employees got. And they both got the step increase that some or most or half of our city employees got. They've also got a merit increase.
On top of the step,
It's not the step and the COLA.
why was there a step? I don't know if I'm clear about that.
Well, the step is a way of rewarding employees who get a good evaluation. And I guess you could call that maybe a little bit of a merit increase, except everybody's eligible.
Well, so I think STEP serves a lot of purposes for the city. I think as an employer, you want your employees to want to achieve their performance goals. And so that's an incentive, but an even better one. You want to engage and retain the employees that have another year under their belt. Because it enhances city's overall performance when you have experienced people in the same positions.
Correct, I understood, but why would you get a step increase? If we negotiate,
Because they haven't,
We did not get a step.
It was less a literal step and more a methodology supporting the total increase.
I looked at it like step increases, it takes 7 years to get to the top. If you start at the bottom, it takes 7 years to get to the top. These guys are.
So it wasn't called a step,
right,
but I think last year, Matthew and I were running the numbers recently, and it was 7.1% last year to this year. And that reflected the COLA last year was 3.3.
3.3.
And this so-called metaphorical step was 3% on top of that 3.3, which brought us to 6.3. And then a 1.5% merit rounded us off at 6.8.
yeah, I'm gonna submit that that's unhelpful and confusing and probably indicates bad will from people who might not follow the philosophical precision that you all did.
Sure, it was just sort of, I think it was just, Rich used it mostly just informally to refer to that 3%. It just as easily could have been attributable to a merit.
Yeah.
Without a step of a 4.5 instead of 1.5.
So I would encourage us to let go of the idea of a step increase for our 2 or 3 employees that we negotiate with every year.
Sure.
Just do the merit. One or the other, it's either a structured step or it's a negotiated salary.
In addition to complement.
Merit increase, yes.
There's no mention in the contract about a step increase, is there?
No. Just a cost of living adjustment applicable to all cities.
Well. There's been a suggestion made that what you're saying is fold the merit in with the step increase.
There's no step. Stepless. These 3 are stepless. They are negotiated executives that have annually negotiated salaries according to this agreement. And if we need to adjust,
These folks are on steps.
It's more significant way to do that.
Legal. Judges.
Can I ask you just a verbiage question? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Well, on, who's this one? On Matthews, the COLA is brought to us by the city attorney. And on Jonathan's, it's brought to us by the finance director. Why is that? Why? Doesn't seem to me, it seems like the finance director would be the one on both of them, to me. And,
Well, it's because I can answer this. Could I just say something to
yeah,
Rich? I just wanted to declare, you know,
I don't understand the question, so I don't.
so I'll flag it for you, but I also want to mention this first. I am conflicted here. I have a conflict of interest in this conversation, so I just want to let everybody know.
yeah.
I have a self-interest conflict. And so the rest of this conversation, I'll be speaking to you as Jonathan Kara, the human being, the attorney, and not the city attorney. And I encourage you to get your own attorney, who you know you can get. Matthew can text him now if you need him, to talk about employment matters. So I just want to be very clear about that. But as Jonathan's opinion in this negotiation, Jonathan's opinion is, the reason for that is because the finance director answers to the city. And it makes a lot of sense for the city to not have a subordinate, the city manager, determine what the CPI that applies to the manager is. In my case, the city's finance director does not answer to me, and I don't answer to the city's finance director. So it made sense to include that, because you're right, ordinarily the finance director on paper would absolutely be the right person.
They get the right number and.
Right, exactly.
It's just a step, yeah.
Right, but because the city attorney, but because the finance director position answers to the city manager, it felt a little bit like there could be hypothetically undue influence, anything that could pressure the finance director to make a decision.
Yeah, but it's a Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI number,
Yeah.
so it's not a number they can mess with.
It's a number that you can, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, when they release the CPIs, they do so by different regions and by different locality sizes. And you could, you know, the finance director might say we have to use a CPI applicable to the greater Portland area versus the attorney thinks that the actual CPI applicable to the city is more closely aligned with the Midwest CPI for whatever reason. So there's that like hidden bias that's imbued in that, despite the fact that it is, you're right, a black and white number, choosing which number to apply.
And at what time?
And right, and exactly, and there's lots of ways to do the stats.
Like in our CBAs, we use January, the CPI as it is in January. And that's something we've refined in our CBAs over the years when we review them. And we don't have that specificity here.
And the other question I have, which is really probably not for this particular topic, but that each shall receive a merit increase, and it seems to me like it should be may. Shouldn't be an automatic, because if we didn't, didn't feel that way, you have no choice, because it says shall.
Yeah, not only does it say shall, it says shall, and it shall be
Shall
commensurate
receive.
with our performance evaluations.
So I guess it could be a negative number.
Right, well, right,
But it's not reasonable to assume that would be the definition.
so there's some flexibility there in the word reasonable, but there is no discretion in the sense
Reasonable.
that, if we get like, let's say it's out of 5 and we get 3 is what your expectations were, and we both had a 4. Whatever that number is for a 4 is what you would get.
Well, instead of dwelling on the,
Anyway, that's all.
It does say,
we've always kind of dwelled on the shall versus maybe, well, maybe we should be dwelling on the word reasonable. Because you could interpret this to mean, we think a 0% is reasonable,
Exactly.
when we think a 5% cut is reasonable. Now, of course, that's not gonna happen.
I think 0% is maybe reasonable, but it's certainly not an increase. And the word, a reasonable
increase
merit
is in-
increase.
Yeah.
Reasonable without a definition attached somewhere is open to
Yeah,
It's a question,
discussion.
it's frankly, it's a question for a jury,
Yeah,
that's what the word is.
anyway, I'm sorry, I just get caught up on words. It's kind of my background.
so Dan's come up with a suggestion, I don't know how you feel about that, including Matthew and Jonathan.
Good suggestions.
That we take out steps and
It's, yeah, the step's not in here.
Just, yeah,
We threw that into the conversation as a way to structure our thinking, and I'm saying, let's not do that, let's just negotiate.
I think, because steps, I think Matthew and I knew that with both, Matthew can speak for himself, but like, I knew going into this that there was no step for the position that I'd be accepting. And I thought that this would be an appropriate way to get a step in so many different words by making it a shall, so long as I'm meeting the performance metrics, which is how we apply step to other staff, except this has the potential of not being capped at 7 years.
National max.
and I guess can you interpret the fact that all the other city employees get a 3% step increase if they're eligible as that in effect is sort of a merit increase?
I think absolutely.
Yeah, except for the fact that half the employees are eligible for it.
I think that that's, sure, and I think.
out?
Huh?
They're
Yeah,
not gonna-
because they're maxed out.
Yeah, and I think it encourages upward mobility in your organization for qualified candidates
Yeah.
to get stepped out as well. Frankly, when you're the city manager and the city attorney, there really is no upward mobility for that. Which is why I think a contract makes a lot of sense.
Maybe it should say reasonable merit increase or decrease commensurate with manager's performance or attorney's performance. I don't know.
It's not
Just a
usually-
thought. This seems very closed in. I don't know if it's true, so even though, well, it's
I think it gets really, I understand what you're trying to say. I think it gets really tricky for any position. If you're gonna be increased. Even when someone has a negative performance review as any staff member, it's the lack of a step
Yeah.
that occurs. There's a whole provision around demotion or reduction in pay that my time here and my time here previously, I've never seen or heard of someone getting a salary reduction because of poor performance. Either it's working to improve that performance and fix the issues at hand moving forward, or if they're unable to be fixed,
Yeah.
part ways.
I'd eliminate the word increase or decrease to the word discussion.
That's been my experience. We get to that point where even 2 years go by and you should have given them a cut and pay, they'll probably die about it.
Any other thoughts? I'm all in favor of the mayor being directed to go forward.
Thank you.
I am in favor of that.
Who would be the appropriate party? I am too, and also who would be the appropriate party to direct a review and sort of a updated revision of the section 5.1? That be an HR director? Who would that be?
Well, so we do have a labor attorney, and I think it depends on who you're talking about, right? If you're talking about me, as we did previously, Jonathan and the mayor negotiated the contract with me and changes in the language within it. If it was for Jonathan, maybe the mayor and I and our labor attorney. Now, we have brought in other outside counsel for previous questions, but we do have a new labor attorney under the same firm that we've always been with. And he was great in the police union CBA, and we could talk to him about any questions you may have on this topic in regards to Jonathan's contract. That's how we came up with these contracts to begin with.
Well, I think there's 2 points that are we might benefit, especially in future years, but we might benefit from cleaning up a little bit. One is the CPI, as Councilor Runnings brought up. We could determine what definition and when to apply that, put that in the contract.
Use the same definition that's in the
And
CBA.
as found related to our area. or region.
Yeah.
This is the one we choose to
The
use.
Western Regional CPI in January, which is what we do for the other codes.
All right, so that would be an easy, apparent, it seems to me that would be pretty straightforward to clean up. And the other one, maybe just taking a look at and clarifying the annual increase negotiated salary language, if there's some issues there, maybe reasonable as the council finds reasonable or something to that to that extent, that we're not leaving that term undefined or fuzzy. So that it would give us trouble, this foreseeably gives trouble in some year.
Well, if we just went with the CPI and with the merit, I find very little in that whole paragraph that needs to be changed.
Well, what Jonathan was saying, though, the CPI could be different for different regions of the country
Yeah,
At times.
that's the easy part.
at times.
Yeah, we could fix that.
So instead of as determined by the two different parties, you just have, as you, if we go with this, as in the CBA.
How the rest of you, well, again, we'd have to. I'd like to know how Jonathan and Matthew feel about that concept. But I'd also like to know how the rest of the council feels about it.
Which one first?
You,
Is CPI easily tightened up? Can we define that in a way that
Yeah,
we're not
that's-
relying on someone to make?
I mean, here's what I would recommend for myself. I'd be fine with the same CPI COLA adjustment that we use for every other staffer. And I'd be fine with a 3% step, just like every other staffer, except without a 7-year cap. So it doesn't make sense for our positions. And I'm not gonna say for Matthew's position, I'm just saying for my position, doesn't make sense. And then something, so that covers, I guess, the first 2/3 of this, and then the last part of it would be whatever we land on as far as what. A change to merit or a revision of this paragraph to remove merit and replace it with something else. I'd be fine with that. And we can clean it up as far as my contract goes, just give me whatever else everybody else is getting as far as CPI and step. Give me 3% every year for step guaranteed. Give me the same COLA as everybody else.
well, I thought I heard you say step increase up until you're here 7 years.
Nope, I said just don't put a cap on it, don't cap me at
You're
7,
saying not to put it,
yeah, just don't cap me at 7.
don't.
In your position?
Yeah, so for me, it's a negotiated contract. So I think that's all open, when it comes to some kind of limit on steps. Tightening up the CPI language though, I have no problem for me. I mean, I don't really even see it as an issue. We apply the CPI, we do,
It's every employee.
we don't use a different data set
Yeah.
for that.
That's right.
We use the same data set, so we can copy and paste the CBA language on the
Yeah,
CPI
that's
if you
fine.
guys want, that's.
And then something and if council's uncomfortable with the idea of merit, get rid of merit, but let's put something else in there. That would be fine on my end.
Like what?
It wasn't being uncomfortable with merit, it was comfortable with shall and increase on the same sentence.
And
Didn't leave much room for decision making.
well, the other question is like, what? I guess like, how do you evaluate that percentage, right? There's no, it just says reasonable, which I can understand that, but.
I
The
mean,
whole idea
yeah.
behind merit is to give an increase above and beyond the COLA commensurate with the performance evaluation,
right,
Yep.
so. Agreed? That's what a merit increase is?
So why would we not just put a period after, in this case, looking at Matthew's manager's performance? Any increase in salary will be negotiated between the city and the manager based upon annual evaluation of the manager's performance, period. Then if you needed a second sentence, you could say, something to the effect that this would exclude the cost of living adjustment based on the blah, 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 blah. CPI. Or in addition to, annual cost of living adjustment.
Good, I mean, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, we could, I think that. What I think the rub of the challenge is around merit, how much and how do you evaluate what's reasonable and everything, is kind of what Ben mentioned a moment ago is. The metrics around it and criteria around it, right? I mean, if you decided that, we get a 4 or a 5 or whatever the average is. That's tied to a certain percentage amount. That's one way to do it. or certain deliverables. Or, you know, if we want to crystallize this, so we're not kind of in this position, like trying to gut our way through it. What did we do last year? We try and come up with all these methodologies or rationales behind it. Well, it's the COLA plus the step plus the merit. Well, no, that doesn't work exactly. So that doesn't resonate so well this year. It did to some degree last year, but not this year. So if you want to crystallize it around something, I think it would be helpful for me at least, I'm not speaking for Jonathan either, in terms of what we do and what we deliver, and then how that all plays out.
I've always been the one, and maybe I'm the only one, who's always been sensitive to what they're getting compared to all the other city employees.
And I'm in that same category.
Okay, now, I think that the COLA part is, I don't even think we should talk about that anymore. I think that's a done deal. It's just how it's worded.
Yeah.
The step increase, again, all city employees, once they're here 7 years, they don't get any more, or they may have started even at a higher salary, right? They might have started at step 3, so they only get 4 years.
Oh, yeah, sure. And then we do look at the pay tables every so years and make holistic adjustments to it. So we look at the market comparables, right? And you may be steps, you know, base to 7, and you're at step 7. So you're maxed out, you're not gonna get any more steps. But we do look every 3 years or so, and make holistic changes to that range. So we may see that range go up 5, 7, 10%, whatever it may be, or not at all. A couple of years ago, we had some adjustments where we brought some staffers out of Public Works. I think one of them was up 30%. That's because they were that far under the market. So just to add that.
These apply to even union employees.
Right. We use that same methodology kind of across the board.
This year we did what, planning?
Yeah, we made some adjustments to planning and SEIU.
Yep.
Next year, intend to do kind of that holistic review.
You might even have to add a step 8 in order to.
No, we just move the designation of the position.
A conversation on the range there is something that always does kind of crop up, right? People who are topped out want that step 8, and then when they become step 8, they want step 9. It's kind of a never-ending cycle, but you know, usually there's some kind of range. Got your COLAs and range, you keep your range competitive for recruitment and retention.
But it makes sense, right? If you're a mechanic at Public Works working for 30 years without retiring, right? Like, if you have unlimited step for 25, 30 years, you're gonna end up being a mechanic at Public Works, making over a couple $1 million a year, right? So mathematically, something has to give.
Well,
Has to be a maximum.
There has to be a maximum.
And usually when people are asking for an additional step, what happens is each step becomes 2.5 instead of 3. Because you're still working within that same range, which is based on your comparables. So you look at your comparable communities, you set your range, your steps in it are still within that range. You could have 50 steps and they're gonna be 0.25% a piece, right? And so it's almost like you're just slicing the pie differently. Your range is your range based on your.
We have a policy, I'm not sure it's in writing or formalized, that we wanted, and I'm not including you two guys, that we have a policy that basically states that we want to be X% above the average for all city positions, salary wise. Am I right?
It's a philosophy that I
Right.
brought to
That's a philosophy.
to the
It's not in
table.
writing, but it's a
Right.
philosophy.
We aim to be competitive recruitment and retention wise. And so
Right.
we look to be a certain percent keeping in mind the sustainability of the city over the average high. And then
Okay,
back
and
in.
the average high is determined by surveying certain key.
Yeah.
Now, that's not in writing anywhere, it's just an informal thing that, you know, Pendleton's our size, Hermiston's our size, Hood River's right down the block. That's the kind of criteria we use.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of formality to that when you get to union negotiations, as you know, you agree upon certain comparable cities. And then we use that as the benchmark.
And that's in writing.
For unions.
Yeah, I don't, yeah,
What if,
the process to arrive at it is.
I don't know, this is just a. What if we were to tie your salaries to something like that?
To benchmark comparables.
Yes.
Well, I think I saw the sheet that I sent out to you for,
Did you do that, by the way?
no, that just happened to be because a lot of city managers are going through.
Oh, so this just came out of the
This just happened. I just forwarded this is just a salary comparison that they'll have to have that I kicked off.
What did I send this already?
Well, that's fine. I can't remember if I put you on it,
We got the sixth highest population.
but it was just
He's the sixth highest salary. I was pointing out that on that survey, the Dalles has the sixth out of all, what, 10?
Yeah.
We're the sixth highest population, and you're the sixth highest paid city manager on the survey. That's a coincidence.
It would be good to see a comparable for city attorney.
Well, you're not comparing apples to apples because a lot of there are cities, I have surveys here at the city attorney. It's hard to get comparable salaries because many of them are contractual city employees,
Right.
they're city attorneys. There's one that was done last year and we were only able to find 5.
well, and a lot of them reflect, you know, the contracts as a whole. So it's just wonky.
Yeah, we could do that for city attorney, it'd be harder, but
I think this is a great list, and I think it's helpful if it's helpful for council. I think it's a little bit different with the question I thought we were here to talk about, which is like. I mean, maybe it's incorporated, but that doesn't really talk about how they deal with increases annually or anything like that. It's just sort of like if you're hiring a new city manager, just probably where you want to land. Maybe there was more to it, maybe I didn't read, that's my first time seeing it, so.
I don't think it had to do with when they're hired. I think it was just they called Canby and said, how much is your city manager?
Yeah.
And they said, he makes 182, 336.
Sure, but like, does that really like, I guess what I'm trying to say, put it another way. Does how much Matthew makes now impact the council's decision on how much to pay him next year? Not as a function of a number, but just sort of as like, what's the methodology with which the council's gonna land on how they determine how much to pay him next year? Does how much he makes right now matter?
Was what?
Does how much he makes right now really matter in that conversation?
Well,
Like, how
I'm
you gonna-
assuming that
yeah.
what we're paying him now is competitive.
Sure,
And so we want to make sure that we pay him and you a competitive wage
right,
that has nothing to do with your performance, it has to do with the market.
Yeah, so,
So,
you know, one,
you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I just thought we were talking about merit and steps, and then now we're talking about like
We got off
the
on
base number, it just seems like a whole different conversation.
That's because I brought up this crazy idea of having your salaries, especially his, because benchmark with other, like we do with the unions.
I'd be more, frankly, I'd be more interested to see how these other jurisdictions that have these contracts with these city managers, how they determine how much to pay their city manager next year. I think that would be more of an interesting conversation,
That
but
may be a useful
how do they determine?
assignment for
Yeah.
our new human resources person.
I mean, so I think we're kind of talking about two different steps in the process, if you would, you know, so
Yes.
every 3 years, we do a holistic, we strive to do a holistic review of the pay tables from top to bottom, not associated with anybody's performance evaluation or anything like that.
Right.
We just look at it from top to bottom, right? And so when we pull this data, we can pull and collect data with HR answers, or just like Troutdale did, for city manager and city adjustment or city attorney, and you can entertain salary adjustments from a recruitment and retention standpoint, just like every other employee. But and then the second part, or the first or second, or wherever you're looking at it, is the changes or adjustments with the performance evaluation. So when we move that one staffer 30%, or I'll just use another, we move someone 10%, that was not associated with their performance.
Understood.
It was simply a process to keep us competitive, recruitment and retention.
With the
wise,
position.
with that particular position, or the pay tables that we're looking at. They still went through a performance evaluation process, and if they weren't topped out, they got a step, you know, based on that matrix and everything. So they both deal with compensation, but I think they're two different processes is what I'm trying to talk about here.
Yes, understood, and I think that I'm suggesting as just one of 6 voices on this side of the table. That would be a useful thing to do, to have the new HR director reach out and include city attorney and city manager. Salary surveys.
Yeah.
In the next one.
Yeah.
Maybe not this afternoon.
Well, so yeah, so
Right.
for this upcoming cycle ahead of SEIU union negotiations next year, that would be the assignment.
That would be useful, okay. For the immediate. You all, whomever, have a salary agreement, or employment agreement. That involves kind of some fuzzy language. And last year we got, this is just my characterization, we got tangled up with the idea of the step increase. Which I think is unhelpful in retrospect.
What do you mean, you got hung up on? What do
Well,
you,
we started doing the math where it was like, they get a step increase and a COLA, but they don't get a step increase. They get a negotiated salary. And we can
according
have,
to the contract,
but there's no step increase. And let's take that out of the conversation because that does not exist at this current stage of life. And well, let me finish.
okay.
So I'm telling you my sense, and I think it's unhelpful. And I think it also can engender hard will. Like, we get tangled up with, well, what's meritorious? As opposed to just negotiating and saying, we think you're doing, in this case, a really good job. And here's what we wish to negotiate, maybe we empower the mayor to do so. And we don't have that step structure. I just don't think it's necessarily a useful framework to try and jerry rig or jerry rig?
Jerry rigging and jerry rigging.
So instead of calling it a step increase, we call it a merit increase. They get that annually based on meeting our expectations.
And maybe we don't even call it merit
they go above-
increase, right? It's an increase.
We could also add maybe if they go above and beyond based on our performance evaluation, then they get a bonus. Throw that in there. Instead of just an annual 3% merit increase, because we call it that
I just
limits the
want,
cap, right?
I just want to remind you guys that the reason step increase was in there at all is because of a goal of making it consistent with what other city employees. Other city employees get a 3% merit or a step increase. So that's why they were giving us 3% step increase. Am I right?
They're not other city employees.
Huh?
They're
No,
not
but
other city employees.
Wasn't there something in
That's
addition to that though?
That's exactly the point. That's exactly the key to all this. Are they not? Just
Currently, they're not. And
by virtue of the fact of what their contract says.
yeah, that's right.
I agree with that.
And then giving them I mean, it's adding in the step to the conversation, it makes them sort of this weird chimera, and like, they're not. Right now, they are executives that have an annually negotiated salary.
It seems to me that you run the risk, any city, not this city necessarily, you run the risk every year, if you keep it as sort of open-ended as you're recommending, or at least putting forth, maybe you're not even recommending it. You run the risk of like conflict between city manager and city attorney and the council, if we're really far apart.
Yeah,
So like, let's say.
that's what you guys negotiated and signed, and we're trying to
Well,
like retroactively like bring some coherence to it.
Well, like, I think what I'm hearing, and please definitely correct me if I'm wrong, is. COLA's fine, let's forget about COLA, okay, everything after COLA. Is up for grabs, I think the way that Rich was characterizing it, from what I'm hearing. Was step was just a guaranteed 3, and then we just had a little bit of wiggle room on the merit. And if you wanna get rid of the guaranteed 3. You just have a lot more room to play with. Which sort of can lead to. A world of us being further away, and maybe different councils and different attorneys and managers might every year. Have that tension until you just might see more turnover. If one side's getting what they want and the other side's not, because really, let's say I came in here with like, I need $250,000 next year. And you guys are like, whoa, you're like 190 tops. And I'm like, I need $250,000. You can't do that, you're at 190. And I'm like, okay, great, what's my recourse? I just leave. That's my recourse.
Dan, there was a word you used of retroactive, that was not my point. I was looking at going forward, what it should say for the next year,
Yeah.
not going back and changing the rules that we're under right now.
No, that's what I'm saying, we are now
Yeah.
not retroactive, but we're trying to impose some. Coherence or some structure going forward that doesn't exist in
Which
here.
may or may not be part of this conversation, maybe we just get back to it.
If
Put the mayor on
it's
the-
negotiated, what your point is right or accurate, Jonathan. But if any percent is negotiated, there's always gonna be that dynamic.
Yeah, it's just like a smaller risk, right? It's like, well, you're really just arguing over like this. Around 2%, 3%, whatever, but like if you get rid of the step, the rigidity of the step, having a 3%, like I'm counting on that 3% every year. And all of a sudden it becomes fuzzy. you're just going to tend to gravitate towards the opportunity to have really far away ideas
But we have that now. There's no.
to a smaller degree.
There's no step.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
There's no cap.
there's no cap and no step.
Yeah.
So
So
I guess
why-
back to my original point, it's like, what would be the proper way to tighten this thing up and have
Yeah.
some
I hear
clarity?
you. I don't know. I mean,
Well, your idea is the way to go if everybody else agrees with it, I guess is the best way to put it. How do you two guys feel about having? Of course, again, the COLA set aside that, understanding your guaranteed that. How do you feel about leaving the rest of your raise at the whim of 6 people?
I mean, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's
That's
what it is now.
true, but
I mean, it's extremely fuzzy because it says a reasonable merit increase, and like Roger made the point, what determines what reasonable is? We don't even know that, right? Or and Jonathan's like, that's a jury question. That's awfully loose, so maybe it would behoove us
who's us?
collectively to gain more clarity on how we're gonna approach this thing.
I don't disagree that it certainly seems like it would help the city, and I don't wanna be flippant,
I don't feel strongly particularly
yeah,
whether it's step or fully negotiated. Right now, it's fully negotiated.
right.
And we're imposing this idea of steps plus merit.
Yeah,
And
we've created a construct over the last couple of years to deal with the fuzziness.
yeah,
Whereas we've talked about this a couple times. Reviewing the process and clarifying and improving the process would help these very conversations, I think.
Yeah.
But we're here today and that's still pending, and I think we're kind of where we were last year, right? We haven't seen those revisions, we haven't seen, how do we clarify, doing the job and doing it well and checking all the boxes, and then, going, that exemplary performance, that kind of above and beyond that talks about X, Y, and Z. So we're kind of stuck again, which doesn't really help us right now, other than, again, I think it's 2 parts.
you mean the step in the merit?
No, and that we need to resolve today in some manner and then refine it going forward.
Yeah, direct staff to bring us back some new ideas.
I'm on it.
Would you 2 guys agree that Dan's idea is pretty much what we do now?
What was the idea?
His idea is that, correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, we leave COLA alone, that's the simple part, and that we make it clear in here that anything above the COLA is completely a merit as determined by the council. Is that, am I right or wrong? Is that what you're?
So if
I think Matthew and I have both agreed and stated the angle. There's 2 questions. What do we do today? And it's fuzzy. We've done some kind of logical approach last year and year before, but it's always felt a little shaky to me. And so there's what do we do today, and then how do we make it clear to our valued employers and ourselves from now on? And so maybe we can untangle those and say, direct staff to negotiate to what? That was my first question. What's the proper way to get at renegotiating or redefining this for the law for next year? And then also, what do we do today?
so I think I mentioned putting on my city attorney hat for just a second from earlier today. Some of the options that Rich and I brainstormed on Friday, talking about big picture process, what next steps might look like.
Yeah.
Just to sort of rehash that, it's either work with us today to give us what you want and what your offer is. Or authorize the mayor to negotiate with us, consistent with how council authorized the mayor to do this for us when we first got hired. And then Rich can bring back a recommendation after some time, after Rich looks into things. Put it on consent agenda for a future council meeting, maybe not the very next one, or the one after that perhaps, in time for the budget. And then it could be either on consent or discussion or action, probably on consent or an action.
So what you're saying is, you come up with something now that all 8 of us agree with
Or
for 25, 26.
Yeah.
and then assign me and or somebody else in addition to me or whatever to work with you guys for something for 26, 27 and beyond.
No, I think you do 25, 26, and I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any consensus of council, at least from my seat. I would recommend even for 25, 26 before the budget's approved and adopted. You just come back to them with a consent item or an action item at a council meeting. Further, I think putting my city attorney hat back on, council definitely needs to be the one to make the motion. Council absolutely needs to make that motion. But the way they get there, whether that's right now or 2 weeks from now, is up to council.
Or 2 weeks from now.
Or whatever.
It has to be done before May, right?
No, it doesn't have to be done before May. The council will adopt the budget in June. You can make adjustments that are less than 10% of the budget. So hopefully that's less.
Hopefully.
Hopefully it's close. That's one piece, and I can verify it with finance, but we included it in the proposed budget, just like we do every other employee, right? So we take a guess.
Every other year.
Yeah, and from every employee too.
Yeah.
So every year we budget for their step increase. Should they earn it through their performance evaluation, we kind of project that forward. And I think, again, I'm just saying it's been the methodology or the structure in years past, it's been, the COLA plus a step plus some kind of merit. And so I can verify with finance, because we did this a long time ago, but we probably use that same methodology to put in a budget placeholder. Because we don't do this until just about tail end of April and June.
So what
So
is
we may
that?
not have to change anything, is what I'm saying.
So what is that figure as a placeholder in the budget for both of your positions?
I think it's probably what we did last year, which was probably something around 3%, 3.3% COLA, 3% stat. What was it?
7.8.
1.5 merit, something like that?
6.8, 7.8%. It was just a reasonable projection just to cover our bases for the balancing of the budget.
Based on the methodology that's kind of been used, not pushing to use it again, but just what we used for the past couple of years.
Because again, the budget law takes precedence over the contract negotiations for the city.
Yeah, and again, in this kind of,
Especially-
unstructured environment, we just
So why
tried to come up
why
with
could
some
we
kind of
spell out
methodology.
that a reasonable merit increase would be the equivalent of a step? 2%, and then start from there, and then, like you say, any merit beyond that. Call it a bonus, but it could call something else, I suppose.
But I
Because the reasonable merit increase, like I say, upon meeting your expectations, that's automatic, you've met them, you've fully satisfied all your requirements. And our evaluations, so you would be entitled to that 3%. If you perform, extraordinarily well, if you get some more on top
Why
of that.
not 2%?
Well, I'm not saying that percentage can be determined by council based on that annual performance evaluation. But automatically they would get, as long as they fully met the requirements, they would get that automatic merit increase, we'll call it merit increase, but it's equivalent of a step, 3%.
What was the merit last year?
I think it was 1.5 or 1, yeah, I
For
think
both of you, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
yeah, because it was 0.8.
So at the end of the evaluation, it has approved merit pay increase, yes or no, at what percentage? So you are 1.5 for last year.
Last year we both were.
Yeah, for last year. Yeah.
I mean, technically it was higher, we just
But they also
broke it out,
2%.
said step is
So-
one bit and merit.
So instead of calling it a step.
4.5%.
call that merit increase.
Reflecting the contract, that is absolutely correct.
In reality,
And-
it is absolutely not.
Well, see, it engenders, potentially engenders hard feelings.
No, it doesn't. It's just reality versus what the contract says. There's no hard feelings. It's the same number.
Says the city attorney.
The numbers appear in my bank account every month, and it doesn't matter what you call it.
But so to your point, Councilor Randall, if I will, what the contract says is the COLA and then the merit. Now, how you guys want to think about and structure it, that's where these constructs come from. So if you want to think of the merit as the step and then the bonus, if you will, I don't really think, my opinion is you don't need to make any changes because you have that complete freedom now. It's just how you all elect to think of it, right? I mean. That's why we.
I think it's been a long day.
What is
I'm tired.
What was the goal of what is the goal being offered?
2 or 3.
3% this year.
3.
And what was the other? There was 3%, 3%, 1.5.
This is the merit.
3%.
Last year was 3.3.
Last year was 3.3, and a 3% step,
Increase,
and then a 1.5% merit.
and all three were effective
July what?
July first.
So mine were effective on my anniversary date, because I started in May, and the rest of them were July first.
So yours was in May.
So, yeah, my cost of living was July first, just like every other cost of living, but my performance evaluation.
So you got part of it on,
Correct. A 1 month,
You're all
Yeah,
three
not
were effective July first.
Because my anniversary date is July 5th.
So it was effective July fifth or July first?
I think we just put them all through.
The idea that you
Put them all through on
Hey,
July.
we're talking
Four out of 364 prime days, it's
about $500.
1/90th. 1/90th is the ratio you're looking for proration.
Did everybody agree that our value, our 3. What do you call it, executives? That's always just the same goal as everybody else that we ought to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, our goal is, yeah,
Well, that was an easy one.
and I think they deserve the step that the other one won't get,
Yes,
without the cap.
yes.
I know, but I'm saying,
They
they call it a
deserve the
step,
pleasure to.
but the other employees are getting that 3%
Yeah,
as a step
But
increase.
they're not all getting.
We call it a merit, but give as a 3%,
yeah.
because that's what the other employees are getting, as long as they're eligible for it. There'll be some differences, like I say, but that's a figure I think we can work with.
So since a budget is a roadmap and you have to guess at numbers that go in there, which the budget committee will look at and put more reality into it, what number did you put in there for your increase? I was curious.
I think we put 7.8% like we got last year. I
I think we put 7.5.
7.5, even less than last year.
Cola is 3, again, using the methodology from prior.
Yeah.
Cola was
step
3,
1.5.
Yes,
the step was 3, and then 1.5 merit
Yeah, it was
was the thinking that leads to 7.5.
See, the whole, that structure though, it locks us into this idea that step and merit are separate. And if we determine to, or if a council
That's too much.
decides it's too much or wants to go higher, then they've been locked into.
Other locks us in.
I think to Jonathan's comment a moment ago, right? And I'm again not arguing for the step rationale, but if you do the COLA, you do the step, whatever the merit is a sliver. Versus just the COLA, and then merit is this bigger piece.
Yeah.
So you're trying to fill in the darkness, right? You're trying to fill in the blank space, and you filled it in by doing the COLA and the step, you fill it into 90%. And so you're making a decision on the last 10%, whereas if you don't include the step construct. You've done 50%, now you need to figure out the rest of the 50%. I don't know if that explanation helps in a different way.
I would also, just toss out there, speaking just for myself, maybe Matthew too, I could be open to negotiating something entirely new. Just something completely different. We don't have to be locked into this, let's just be honest, not so great system, it seems, considering it's been 3 years of this and it's only gotten worse, I think, every year going through this process.
So
We could be working, yeah,
according to those forms, we look like we're pretty competitive in our size communities and higher than some on that list. So, I'm looking 3% with the COLAs like everybody else gets, and then another 2 for the merit is a good starting point. 5 total.
I mean, I would say, just looking at the city manager's list, Rod, yeah, sure, maybe it looks like we're pretty competitive for that snapshot. But who knows what those city manager contracts have come in just July 1st. July 1st, those numbers should be way out of whack. Really, that's why I'm trying to emphasize what they have now is interesting. Frankly, it's a different conversation. What do they have next year? In 2 months, what's the salary?
At this point, I just want us to move forward.
Well, we're in open session now.
Yeah.
So I move to direct staff
Well, that's to come back with,
to come back with a salary study for the three.
Positions.
So,
I'm sorry.
but not to interrupt your motion, but the judge's contract doesn't have any.
That's right.
Right, I'm sorry, for the two executive contracted employees.
Okay.
Sometime in the next 6 months. So we can start discussing it ahead of time.
Well, what do we do?
For,
Go ahead.
love of Pete. For fiscal year 26-27. Yeah, I'm trying to get at, I'm trying to say,
You're just saying, let's do a salary study for 26, 27.
and salary study and. Clean up the process, next year's process, but we need to get going on it at some point, I'm saying. That we,
We do that every year anyway.
No, we don't.
no, we
Huh?
don't.
No, we don't.
We don't do salary surveys every year?
Every 3
Not every
years and not for every employee.
But in the next cycle, we totally can. I mean, it's up to you, but.
Put my city attorney hat back on. A counselor has made a motion.
Thank you, city attorney Kara.
Is there a second or is it dying on?
They haven't heard a clear motion yet.
What? Sorry?
Can you restate your motion?
Yeah.
If you're making one.
Yeah. I moved to direct staff. To conduct. Salary survey for our two executive contracted. And bring back results of that survey. In the next 6 months. So that we could negotiate and update our compensation agreement for fiscal year 26-27.
You're implying that the results of that survey shall be incorporated into the contract?
I think it would be super helpful to negotiate or to clarify this contract with that knowledge in hand. Ahead of the fact far enough so that we can all.
So the answer to my question is yes.
Yes,
Okay, and is part of your motion is not going to include which communities are surveyed? Is that up to the staff or?
I guess I would lean on the professionalism of the staff. To use their new HR manager to appropriately survey. Get us that information. Fellow counselor wants to amend the motion, is to list a specific set of communities, have at it.
Second? Basically,
It's me.
okay, is there a second to the motion? Anybody? Second,
All right, I want to hear 0 complaints about this 1 year from now, when we're in exactly the same position.
I didn't hear in the motion anything about clarifying the language, which.
I've mentioned it about 12 times in this conversation that I wanted to clarify.
I jumped around in.
To be very, very clear. I think this is fuzzy and
It is
continues
fuzzy.
to give us and our valued employees some amount of difficulty. And I think it would behoove us to clarify this.
Okay.
And I think going into that clarification exercise, we're gonna want to know comparative salaries. And I think if we start now, we could be leading the target so that none of us is rushed or under pressure, and that we could have a conversation over some amount of time.
I'm just saying we got two separate topics.
Yes, we
One
did.
was a motion about having staff help us
Yes.
clarify that paragraph in there, the verbiage that's
Yes.
used in there. totally separate from going out for salary surveys and the rest of it. I don't think they have to be tied together. We just need to know that that paragraph is clear. The words that are in there, the shall, reasonable, those, we just need that, that's the first thing, is to get that done, and whether we need salary surveys, et cetera, we could do that another time.
So make that motion. So make that motion.
Here's a motion. I can't make it, but somebody else can. You might as well just cut to the quick here.
Yeah.
Somebody make a motion to authorize a 7.5% increase for Jonathan and Matthew and the chief and the judge. Effective May for Matthew, July for Jonathan and the judge. And that the mayor be authorized, and I'd really appreciate having some help on this. Authorize a study of clause 5.1 in the contract and work with Matthew, Jonathan, and another council member to negotiate a revision to 5.1 for 26, 27 and beyond.
Is that acceptable?
Two different motions.
I'll second your motion to get discussion.
Matthew,
I think you're saying that because of the premise that I stated from last year,
what
Right.
on this?
the 7.5 is.
In fairness to you, full disclosure, I get called every year by Angie asking me, in my opinion, as to what should go in the budget.
Okay,
And I don't know how much input you had, but I know I had input in that 7.1.
was it the same methodology that I?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to,
And
if you're
notice,
going off of what I said, I wanted to confirm. what I-
well, and notice I did not say 3% for this and 3%.
Right, you just said-
I just said 7.5%.
So did you get all of that motion?
Can we clarify that to 7.5% including
COLA.
the COLA, meaning it's not
We
in
could.
above?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Just to
question.
clarify it.
Yeah.
3% merit, 3% step, 1.5% merit, that's what you want. You can say that. But I thought it'd be-
I think it was,
What was the effective date?
For Matthew, it'd be May what? His anniversary,
15,
effective on the respective anniversary dates.
Except Matthew's COLA wouldn't kick in until July, just like everybody
Correct,
else's.
yeah.
So consistent with everything else that he said.
Effective with the date as legally described.
And the other part of this is authorizing the mayor to work with Jonathan and Matthew to discuss 5.1 of the contract for the fiscal year 26, 27 and beyond.
Would you be willing to put a time frame on when you bring that back to council?
Yeah. See, let's see my turn up on this.
That's why it has to be
Missed it by
separate
that.
from the motion about money. The rewriting of that paragraph has got to be a separate thing.
Two motions.
I wouldn't put it inside this motion.
Let's see. Effective, a target date for completion is December 31st.
That's not the increase dates for their.
That's not, that's the
That
swap.
would be,
That's
somebody,
city clause.
somebody just asked if we should put a time limit on this second part of this.
So that's why I think it should be a separate motion.
That's fine.
Do you have this down, Scott?
Part of it, so move to authorize,
Well, the first motion would be, whether, do you want the COLA and all that shit in there?
yeah, who,
So with respect, Rich can't make the motion.
I understand,
Right.
I'm just trying to get the
He's
language.
trying to get the
correct.
language.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move to authorize who for the salary, the finance department to. Who?
City council.
How about to say 7.5%, which includes the COLA?
Who's the COLA, the.
And you don't have to say step.
So
I'm not using that anymore. We've been listening to Dan.
Move to award salary increase of 7.5%.
Inclusive
Include
of
COLA and merit, effective respective anniversary dates. For the city manager and city attorney.
Correct, and for the judge. Effective July 1st.
For the 3 contract employees.
Right.
You have your suitcase packed, or are you pretty good with this?
Well, it's funny because you're authorizing like the award like it's a contract, right? And it certainly is a contract, but it's like a negotiated contract. So what you're all doing now is setting Is that your limit, 7.5? That's where you're make it or break it, no other offers, that's your last and final? Or are you also authorizing Rich to negotiate?
Yeah, he's not gonna, we're doing it now, is what it sounds like.
So this is the upper limit of Rich's negotiating power is to go up to 7.5.
There's no
Which
motion to allow
includes-
negotiation. The motion.
Which
it has-
includes-
The negotiations
just like
come on the
yours is.
second motion where I work with you guys to work out 5.1, the paragraph 5.1
For the future,
for the future.
but I'm sorry, I was just thinking back what Councilor Richardson was saying all meeting, which this is a negotiated salary, right? So 7.5% is the city's offer,
Yeah. It's in the budget.
Including the COLA.
but I'll wear both hats, right? Of course, I'm conflicted out of this conversation as your attorney, but. You know,
That's not a negotiation.
that doesn't sound like a negotiation to me, that just
It's
sounds like
not.
take your 7.5 and get out
I
of here.
think,
No.
I think we're
I'm
pausing
asking if
and
that
we're
acceptable,
asking you,
is that acceptable?
what is what input do you have?
Actually, it doesn't matter, because if they don't like it, they'll refuse it, and it will come back to us anyway, so we don't have to ask that question, is it
No, I
acceptable?
think it's an important question.
Well,
You guys wanna, how do you feel about 7.5%?
including
Do
COLA.
you want something more or is that acceptable?
Do you want? Do you wanna ask us individually?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get through that.
I mean, if the 7.5% are my vegetables for this year and I'll eat them. With the understanding that we would have a more negotiated 5.1.
We are
for the
this is a
future.
negotiation.
Okay,
We're making you an offer and we're negotiating.
here's my counter.
Okay,
Take the 7.5% if Matthew does. And I would expect some flexibility in an actual negotiation when we're not all tired. And a fresh face for our section 5.1. That's my
that's what I said.
Yeah, but like I would expect more of a negotiation for 5.1, with the understanding that I didn't put up any fight for the 7.5. That's some goodwill that I've garnered. That's my counter.
That leads me to believe that you want more than that.
Yeah, I want a negotiated salary for the future, that's.
And you can have these wonderful desserts too.
Oh, man.
Highly recommended.
Can't wait to try those. You know, that energy.
So going back to the recommendations before we started this morning, possibly we could move to authorize the mayor
You
to
could,
negotiate on our behalf,
you could,
Negotiate what?
the salary increase
but it's,
For this year?
this year.
you could.
That's one option.
But you said we can't have that discussion in executive session.
Yeah, I have a counter.
I think Matthew wants to say something.
Oh, I think 7.5 is fine, but if we're here in this same place, having the same conversation again, it's an automatic 20. Because I don't wanna be here again next year, and I think we all don't.
I guess what Councilor Richardson was trying to get at is, next year, we want to improve this.
And I think that's what Jonathan's getting at too, is that we need it,
We need something, that's what, yeah, we need something more back and forth.
I'm joking for the record here, and everything. I'm just trying to put a pin on it.
I was thinking more-
I do not wanna be here like this next year.
Understood.
So we can,
We can move
To your
motions
point,
we
you wanna
discussed.
negotiate with Cole. How can how could we have a negotiation where we have to give the mayor direction in an open meeting? And we can't do it in executive session?
What's the question, what do you wanna talk about in executive session?
we're not in executive.
No, what
Did you
what
not
is
say
it, what's
we
the
could
idea?
not have that discussion in executive?
Which discussion?
How to direct the mayor for negotiations?
You could have that in executive session. You just can't have it in an executive session connected with my performance.
So we'd have to notice and.
Yes. This is exactly what I told Rich on Friday. It can be done, just not the way that we've done it. And Matthew knows all about that as well. And Matthew has that, he knows exactly what to do for that conversation. But it can't be today.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't even know if you need it, but I mean, again, this is my, Jonathan's. All I was asking for, sure, I'll take, I'll speak for myself, I'll take the 7.5 happily. With the understanding that the section 5.1 gets negotiated better and differently than this. An actual negotiation. Where I get something, you get something, we both get nothing, like there's a back and forth, like bargain. Not just here's your 7.5. I'll take it.
Mr. Dixon?
I'll just point out that you signed the contract as well as we do, so.
Yeah, I know.
So you don't sign the contract unless you're happy with it,
Sure,
okay, so.
that's right. I was happy with it.
We have a member, with a motion for the. floor.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Please.
All right, I'll make a motion to award a 7.5% salary increase to include the cost of living allowance and merit increase to the 3 contracted city employees effective on their respective anniversary dates.
2, not 3.
No, the judge also,
All three.
all 3.
Judge as well.
The only thing is, I don't know that the judge has an anniversary date.
He does.
Yeah.
He signed the contract,
Okay,
but the judge's annual salary is like $28,000.
I'll second this motion first before we have more discussion.
21 and a half.
21.
What's that?
The judge's salary is 21 and change.
Is it super part-time?
So
One more, we have a
motion on the floor,
second.
and a second by Councilor Runyon. Is there any more discussion? Anybody?
Well, I think this is a compromise, if you will, but actually we basically matching what we did last year, so I think going forward, we want to do it better, we want to improve on our process.
The other big part of this that as far as I'm concerned, is that 7.5% represents. I think it's important that these two guys remain competitive. And looking at the salary surveys, the limited amount we have for his and what we have for Matthew, it seems to me that they're staying pretty competitive with what their counterparts are making.
As I recall, that's what the process was to get them up to speed along with their comparable cities, city managers and city attorneys.
Then I would just say under discussion that if we find that information out down the road, we can
Right.
always call a special meeting to discuss that issue and offer a change.
Yeah.
So it's not a table.
The salary survey would be part of that.
Yeah.
So the information that I, provided on CM salaries on from Troutdale. It does provide an average. And I think kind of adjustment helps us catch up to that average because we are below. And then keep us there hopefully keep us there. Thinking about all these communities doing the same thing during this same type of cycle.
Well, I think it's important to have Pendleton, Hermiston, LeGrand.
I think that's a separate motion.
Are we discussing-
We need to discuss the current motion.
I'm just telling you what I think should be in the salary survey, because that'll be next, so, okay. Is there anything, it's been moved and seconded, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Randall,
Aye.
Runyon,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Okay, now motion passes unanimously. Okay,
Before, I have to run, I'm about 40 minutes late for a different meeting.
Me too.
But I can stay because this is obviously more important. It's a city council meeting, of course, it's just way over schedule. Is there anything else? What is the agenda for the next few minutes of this meeting or for the rest of this meeting?
the second part, Scott's gonna make a motion about what we do for 26, 27, and then renegotiate section 5.1 of the contract.
Authorizing the mayor to renegotiate?
That's what she is.
Is that what's happening? Can the mayor and or a member of council or?
Do we have to make a motion on that, or is it just give staff direction to bring us
To
back?
study it and come up with
I thought that was
recommendations.
just the direction.
Okay.
How do you?
It's something I don't-
And if you have. the
Let's do a motion, let's make it a little more formal and clear.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to word this now, so.
I leave it to Matthew, I have to go.
Thank you.
We want to review
Thank you, John.
clause 5.1 in the salary, the agreements. Have staff review that for recommendations. Clarify what a merit increase is.
I think we were talking about holistic review
How we arrive at the merit increase.
of section 5.1 and authorize the mayor to negotiate with staff to come up with a recommended.
Right.
revision.
Understand that, yeah,
Does anybody else want to do this besides me?
I got you.
Exactly the negotiations.
You want to take my place or work with you? Okay.
So, back to the motion then, what we gonna try to, how we gonna deliver this?
So if I may make a suggestion. You can just direct consensus direction if you're comfortable with it. For me to include city manager, city attorney position, and the city's comp study. I'm gonna do a comp study that's coming up. I'll do it for every position across the board, city manager and city attorney and judge included. And that's for the future. I don't think that needs to be part of the motion.
I think it's important.
I will just do that based on our,
I wanna have input into the ones that are serving.
the cities.
Yeah.
Sure.
And HR, the new HR person
Yeah,
should be.
and so I will do that, because that's my job, I'll delegate to my staff accordingly, right, if I want the. HR person to do it, I'll delegate to them, I will, I'm just making a point
Gotcha.
a little bit. So I'll handle it. And so I think what your motion should be focused on is basically rewording or revising. And empowering the mayor and council around it.
Reviewing and
5.1.
possibly revising the entire 5.1.
Well, I think the word negotiate is appropriate.
Renegotiate section 5.1 of the city manager and city attorney's code. I move to, direct the mayor and Councilor Randall to renegotiate sections 5.1 with the city manager and the city attorney.
Sounds good.
It's moved by the city manager. You
No.
just said I move.
All right,
Are you making that motion, Scott?
Scott,
Sure, if I
okay,
make sure that this is written down right.
Then I would humbly just say by the end of 2025,
Humbly
trying,
Renegotiate.
more tense in this room.
renegotiate or negotiate, I think either one, right? They were negotiating, so renegotiate is appropriate.
Alan, do you have
It's kind of a
it?
half-assed negotiation. Since it all did was,
You're interested in being involved with this, Scott,
Yes.
what, you wanna do it?
so let me make a question, so yeah.
Okay, oh yeah, okay.
If that's acceptable.
Sure, yeah.
I would move to direct and authorize the mayor and Councilor Randall to review and negotiate employment contract section 5.1 with the city manager and the city attorney. Bring back a recommendation to council by the end of 2025.
Right. I don't think you need the word review in there, that's pretty. I said it was petty.
All right,
It
second,
has been moved.
all right, you're gonna restate,
It's been moved by Councilor Richardson and seconded by Councilor McLaughlin
correct,
that the mayor and Council Randall be directed to negotiate or renegotiate section 5.1 of the employment contracts for the city manager and the city attorney
By the end of 2025.
by the end of 2025. Calendar year. Any questions?
no,
Roll call, Randall,
Aye.
Runyon,
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Brink,
Aye.
Richardson. What do we do with these notes and these minutes? We give them to Amy?
Yeah.
Should we talk about or something?
Then we'll talk about.
Okay, any other business come before the city council? It's been 6.5 hours. Not to say that we shouldn't bring anything else up. I just thought I'd point out.
It's been a productive day.
Council McLaughlin just put his hat on. I guess it says a lot.
Time to go, god damn it.
Oh. He wants to go.
Okay, last
Sure
call.
thing.
Anything else?
The energy orbs with you.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
One thing in the dark, we don't, you know, I would stop this course.
Somebody want to stop
Or,
recording?
you know, what you would want, I saw the comparables and so we have to get mine. And how we compensate. What we have to work out with details. That's how I see it, right? And then also. When I was in school.
By itself, it's not that,
We
not
negotiated
that
with,
groundbreaking.
We're gonna do it every year.
and then the administration came back and we were negotiated.
That's a bad thing or good thing.
Which was much higher than the teachers.
I'm reviewing notes on my.
That caused
Just the.
a lot of
Get you and Scott.
discourse between staff and administration.
I think
That happened.
overall, based
So what
on
we
my
have to do is-
observation is that at the end of the day.
Because what you've done is
And
what you've done is trying to bring some
amount of time,
conformity
that it may not be the same increase
Consistency.
every year, but some amount
and
of
trying
time, there will
to
be.
prevent
it
or
will
to increase recruitment
So
and
how do
keeping
we
people.
protect,
Right.
be financially.
So what you're trying to do is equalize and compensate based on
I've never had a
City.
COLA increase
what
in
they're
my
earning,
life.
where their city
Or step
salary is. So
I-
it makes it competitive.
But I hate whatever the radio station offered me.
Yeah.
With Prudential Securities and Allstate, I was a commission sales,
Yeah.
what I made was what I sold.
Sure.
But the step increase, the 7-year cap is, seems, because I think the federal government's up to 14, if I'm not mistaken.
What's that?
Oh, the step increases go beyond 7 years and other government.
In federal employment, you have 10 steps to each grade. So be a grade.
So maybe like it's a cap somewhere in that ballpark.
Because before you came on board.
My 15 years of broadcast, never had any benefits.
How far do you want to school?
I don't even know how I got to live this long. Didn't know about any of that stuff.
All right, I was gonna keep these so that I can.
Giving away money on trees.
I could do that. And not that I'm trying to, I don't want it, that's not what I mean,
Made note.
but like. And we never wanted them.
Yeah, you're right.
Which I also.
I was chocolate. Real chocolate.
Someone, and council.
So here's a wild hair. What if we get, you and I, email to email stuff.
So do other staff too, that's what makes it.
And you take one, you want to take the other, I just like, do like a little red line and bounce back and forth.
Yeah, if we do it in
Is that a little too?
Word, we could, I don't know if you have access to that, but then we can
Because the buck does stuff.
combine the.
So even the police.
Agreed, I like it.
Well, I live here.
Good job, Mr. Mayor.
It does.
Thank you, Mr. Running.
I won't do this again.
This one, right, figure out what
This amount of money, spend an entire day here,
Yeah,
all the meetings we've been having,
And so what you do
we
is
gotta
you
do
look at
something about that going
comparison.
forward.
Well, we should
justification
renegotiate.
for,
And we should.
is it
Didn't read.
compensating for
I just want you
or
to.
the requirements? Something has to have, I see that there is a number of people that you supervise also comes back as far as sending your
We need to
pay.
have a-
Self-correct.
We need to have clearer, tighter processes.
Well, crazy for a bunch of volunteer electeds. Okay,
You muddle through, we muddle through.
Hey, we doubled your salary, I don't know what else you want.
Thank you, Rich.
Education, we have educational steps.
hope we got more in the budget.
Hey, please take these home and do them.
Mike's his family. You take up the others.
There's green things.
They are really bad.
It's pumpkin seeds, come on.
You gotta try with just.
It's like.
Take a big bite.
You guys suffer the whole day, I'll
It
suffer
can't be any
alongside.
worse than Filipino street food.
That's
Come
why
on.
the bigger
Leaves an
bite.
aftertaste, took 3 cups of coffee to get a taste out of it.
From Farm Stand. I went in there looking for cookies, they're like, no, but we got these things.
They're made with hemp.
They're really crunchy. It's my observation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Well,
look at that green thing move.
I did.
It's gonna linger.
Dan's right, though, there's nothing worse than I've eaten in the building.
I need to, just
You want me to hang back?
two quick things.
Yeah.
I understand.
Better. Can you shred all that?
I've got another here.
Mayor.
Nobody wants to keep them.
All right.
It'll be a violation.
Yeah, you just don't want that out and about.
From prior years?
No, this is, I
I've got everything in
don't know
there.
what's in there, maybe,
Your guys' notes are in there?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all in there.
Do you have like a list of like notes or projects or anything like you did last year?
No. We should have talked about that.
Okay, I gotta go.
Yeah, Tim. Yeah, no, I was just thinking like,
No, last year we had 6 and I reviewed all those with everybody and we checked off everything that you had done.
right, those like additional.
Yeah, there was 6 items and I.
Dad's still here. He's coming though.
Hey,
Where's the, I want a cookie, where's the cookie?
oh, he wants a cookie.
I'm just kidding, just kidding.
All right, we're almost done here, sweetie. Can you hang out?
Yeah.
What's this text message I got about Washington DC.
Wait, I wanna put this to your bag.
Who's Joey?
Joey's with Congressman Pence's office.
Can that be a voicemail?
Yeah.
Must have been a landline.
I asked a question, what meeting is going on in the,
Beautification.
God, okay.
Go in there and say hi.
So,
Go in there and pay your respects, tell them you appreciate what they're doing.
so Joey is like the local state
Okay.
rep for Pence's office.
He wants to confirm everything's all set, yes. Good to go, yes.